everyone. This is Wayside School Beneath the Cloud of Doom. This is book 4 in the Wayside series. Chapter 1, The Bells of Wayside. It's very important that the children of Wayside School know the bell system. The first bell in the morning sounds like this. Whoop, 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 whoop. When they hear it, they know they have 16 minutes to get to class. That's not too difficult for those in Miss Hargrove's class on the 3rd floor. But Wayside School is a 30-story building with one room on each floor. So for those who happen to be in Mrs. Jewell's class way up on the 30th floor, they must be ready on the first whoop. Today, Todd was in Mrs. Jewell's class. He was stuck behind a mass of kids outside the building waiting for the doors to open. He jumped up and down trying to see over those heads and to the people in front of him. If he was late, Mrs. Jewell put his name on the blackboard under the word discipline. The kids who went to class on the lower floors often dilly-dallied. If Todd got stuck behind a group of large dilly-dalliers, he'd have no chance. Inside the principal's office, Mr. Kidswatter sat behind an enormous desk and watched the clock. At the moment the second hand reached the number 12, he shrieked into his microphone, whoop, 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 whoop. The doors unlocked, and the children stampeded into the building and up the stairs. Todd tried his best to weave in front of them, but there wasn't a lot of room. 8 minutes later, Mr. Kidswatter tugged on the rope hanging at the hole in the ceiling and rang the second bell. Clang, 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 clang. Todd counted the clangs. 8. That meant now he had 8 minutes to get to class. 7 or 9 clangs would have meant something completely different. 7 meant a helicopter was landing on the roof. 9 clangs meant that a porcupine had entered the building. So far, he had only made it to the 7th floor, but he had finally managed to weave his way past all the dilly-dalliers. There was nothing to slow him down now. When he reached the 18th floor, he heard a loud ching-a-ling, ching-a-ling, ching-a-ling. Nothing to worry about there. That just meant that they were out of donuts in the teacher's lounge. The scary bell was the late bell. It didn't matter where he was. It always sounded like an angry driver was slamming on a car and horror right in front of him. It made Todd jump every time. He quickly dashed from the 18th to the 20th floor. There was no 19th floor. His legs were sore. He was breathing hard as he reached the top. Just ahead, he could see Joy entering the classroom. "Don't shut the—" Todd shouted. Joy shut the door behind her. "Guzak," said Todd. He was just opening it when the horn blared, as if right behind him. "You're late, Todd," said Mrs. Jewell as he entered the classroom. "I know," he said. He wrote his name on the blackboard under the word discipline. Other bells rang throughout the day. At noon, the lunch bell kabonked 3 times. 3 kabonks meant macaroons and cheese. The bell for recess was just a single ding, but nobody ever missed that one. At the end of the day, Mr. Kidswatter would bang a giant gong with a large iron mallet. That was his favorite thing about being principal. Todd sat at his desk, gloomily looking at the blackboard. The day had started off badly for him and only gotten worse. There was now a check mark next to his name under the word discipline. Next to that, Mrs. Jewell kept adding homework assignments. Read a book, write a book report, draw a picture, don't forget a paperclip. History, read pages 55 through 59 and answer the questions on page 61 and 62. Math worksheet, do even and odd number problems. Science, read pages 29 through 34 and do experiment on page 37. Todd had a sick feeling in his stomach, and it wasn't just the mac and cheese. In big letters on the top of the blackboard, Mrs. Jewell had written, "Ultimate test starts tomorrow." Mrs. Jewell had been warning the class about the ultimate test all year. The test would last for 3 days. If he failed, Todd would be sent back to kindergarten. And then he heard it, the most magical bell of all. Ping pong! The bell had only rung once in the history of Wayside School, and nobody knew who rang it. But everyone knew what it meant. All around, the kids began cheering and clapping their hands. Shouts of joy could be heard coming from every floor of Wayside School. Todd just sat there in stunned disbelief. It rang again. Ping pong! It was the erase the blackboard bell. Mrs. Jewell had no choice. She picked up the eraser. Up and down Wayside School, teachers were doing the same thing. Todd smiled as the homework assignments were wiped away. The ultimate test was canceled. His name was removed from the discipline list, and even the word discipline soon disappeared. Deep in the basement, a man with a black mustache snapped open a black attaché case. Another man, also with a black mustache, placed a small silver ball into the case. A third man, who was bald, put a solid gold ping-pong paddle. Chapter 2 is called A Million. By the time Terrence got to school, he had already kicked 99 different things. It started the moment he woke up. He kicked his bed. He kicked Rocky, his favorite stuffed animal. When he left his bedroom, he kicked the door shut. He kicked the wall as he sat at the kitchen counter and ate cereal. He kicked the table. He kicked 3 chairs. He kicked rocks on the way to school. He kicked a flagpole. Still, as much as Terrence liked to kick things, it would take him a whole lot to reach 1,000,000 kicked things. How much is 1,000,000? Mrs. Jules asked the class. Oh, I know, said Mac, stretching his hand high. Mrs. Jules called on Mac. 1,000,000, Mac answered proudly. Well, yes, I suppose that's correct, Mrs. Jules. 1,000,000 is 1,000,000. Anyone else? John? John lowered his hand. 999,999. He paused. Plus 1. He smiled. Oh, that's good, John, said Dana, very impressed. John is really smart, Joe agreed. Terrence wasn't paying attention. His big toe hurt from all the kicking. His toenail was too long. Sherry, who had been sleeping at her desk, suddenly awoke and said, 10 times 10 times 10 times 10 times 10 times 10. She rested her head on her red and blue overcoat and went back to sleep. Oh, is that right, Mrs. Jules? Asked Jason. Mrs. Jules, as she tried to multiply all of Sherry's tens. Well, if Sherry said it, it must be right. Arithmetic makes my brain numb, said Damien. That's why they're called numbers, said DJ. Terrence's big toe throbbed in pain. He couldn't think about anything else. There's really only one way to understand just how big 1,000,000 is, said Mrs. Jules, and it's not by using arithmetic. We need to collect 1,000,000 somethings. Dollars? Exclaimed Joy. Everyone cheered. They liked that idea. Then we could have the biggest party ever, said Dee Dee. We're not collecting $1,000,000, said Mrs. Jules. Any other ideas? Pumpkins? Shouted Dana. Everyone cheered Dana's idea too, but not as loudly as Joy's. I don't think 1,000,000 pumpkins would fit in the school, said Mrs. Jules. We need something small and not too expensive. Stephen suggested little pieces of paper. Nobody cheered. Boring, sang Kathy. Stephen felt hurt, but deep down he had to admit that collecting bits of paper would have been a whole lot of fun. Ron suggested mud, but that too was rejected. That's a good idea, Ron, said Mrs. Jules, but you can't count mud. Why not? He asked. There's no such thing as 1 mud or 2 muds, explained Mrs. Jules. Why not? Ron asked again. I don't know, said Mrs. Jules. She had to admit. Terrence couldn't take it any longer. He offed his shoe, then his sock. One desk over, Rodney stared at him, horrified. Terrence's toenail was bent out of shape and turned black and blue. He opened his desk and took out a pair of safety scissors. Then, crossing one leg over the other, he started snipping. You can't cut your toenails in class, said Rodney. It's against the rules. Who says? Said Terrence. His one tough toenail and the scissors weren't all that sharp. Mrs. Jules, said Rodney. Terrence is cutting his toenails right in class. Some kids laughed and some kids said, gross. Terrence pushed hard on the scissors. At last, a piece of his toenail fell free and his toe instantly felt better. Terrence, come up here now, demanded Mrs. Jules, and bring your toenail with you. Terrence picked up the clipping off the floor. One shoe off, one shoe on, he hobbled to the front of the room. Give me that, Mrs. Jules demanded. Terrence dropped the nail clipping into his teacher's outstretched hand. You're a genius, Terrence, said Mrs. Jules. She held the nail clipping high in the air. That's 1, she announced. 999,999 to go. Ew. Chapter 3 is called Up and Down. Up, said DJ. Down, replied Kathy, who sat next to him. Up, DJ repeated. Down, Kathy insisted. In truth, Kathy didn't know what DJ was talking about. She just liked to argue. No matter what DJ said, she always said the opposite. Up, DJ said again. Down, Kathy insisted. Shh, said Dana, who sat behind Kathy. I'm trying to read. Kathy turned around. Dana's face was streaked with tears. Why are you crying? Asked Kathy. Dana shoved her book she had been trying to read, The Lost Giraffe. So? Asked Kathy. The giraffe is lost, Dana sobbed. Well, what did you expect, stupid? Asked Kathy. She didn't like Dana any more than she liked DJ. Up, said DJ. Down, snapped Kathy. Dana, Kathy, DJ, said Mrs. Jules. You're making a lot of noise for a silent reading. Sorry, said DJ. I can't help it. I have the hiccups. Kathy turned red. She had been arguing with a hiccup. Has this ever happened before? Mrs. Jules asked him. I've had the hiccups before, said DJ, but they always went away. Stand on your head and drink a glass of water, Myron suggested. Eat a lemon, said Jenny. Hold your tongue out while you say the Pledge of Allegiance, said Joy. DJ tried their suggestions. When he finished, his mouth was puckered, his shirt was wet, and he still had the hiccups. He felt very patriotic, however. I think you better go see Dr. Pickle, said Mrs. Jules. Kathy will take you. Kathy hopped out of her seat, glad she wouldn't have to read. Come on, dummy, she said, and led DJ out of the door. Up, hiccuped DJ. Down, said Kathy. She couldn't help herself. Dr. Pickle's real name was Dr. Pickle. His office was on the 4th floor. Kathy unlocked the door. Dr. Pickle opened it. He had a pointy beard and wore glasses. Yes, he said. Stupid here's got the hiccups, said Kathy. Up, hiccuped DJ. Down, said Kathy. Dr. Pickle rubbed his chin. Very interesting, he muttered, although he was looking at Kathy, not at DJ. Very, very interesting. He told Kathy to wait, and he invited DJ inside. And he smiles too much, too, Kathy said just before he shut the door. DJ sat down on a couch. Dr. Pickle sat across from him. He held a long gold chain. On one end hung a green stone shaped like a pickle. Dr. Pickle gently swung the stone back and forth. Watch the pickle, he said. His voice was warm and soothing. DJ's eyes moved back and forth with the stone. I will count to 5, and then you will fall into a deep, deep sleep, Dr. Pickle counted slowly. 1, 2, boop. DJ fell off the couch. Well, asked Dr. Pickle. DJ got up. He waited for a moment. I think they're gone, he said. Dr. Pickle led him to the door. First thing we learned in psychiatry school, he said, patting DJ on the head. My hiccups are all gone, DJ told Kathy. Who cares, said Kathy. Wait, said Dr. Pickle. Would you mind stepping inside my office, young lady? Me? Asked Kathy. Please, said Dr. Pickle. But he's the sicko, said Kathy, pointing at DJ. Please, Dr. Pickle repeated. Kathy shrugged and then entered the counselor's office. That beard is really ugly, she said. I guess your face must be even worse, huh? DJ sat on the floor in the hallway with his back against the wall, waiting for Kathy. He smiled, happy that his hiccups were gone, although he missed them a little, too. Hiccups are annoying, but kind of fun. Sometime later, the counselor's door opened. Thank you, Dr. Pickle, said Kathy, calling him by his proper name. You are very wise, and I like your beard. That's very nice of you to say, Kathy, said the school counselor. He stepped out of the door. Hi, DJ, she greeted him. Thanks for waiting. You're a good friend. The smile left DJ's face. Something was definitely wrong with Kathy. Let's go, said DJ. Yes, up, Kathy said. Now, he was really worried. Chapter 4. Consider the paperclip. Read a book, write a book report, draw a picture. That was the assignment Mrs. Jules had put on the board. Dana's picture showed a giraffe studying a map. She had drawn a large question mark over the giraffe's head. Her book report only had to be 1 page, but she had written 2 whole pages. The Lost Giraffe was her favorite book ever. Now all she needed was a paperclip. She searched her desk. She found quite a few pencils, mostly broken. There was a lot of eraser bits and crayon nubs. There was also a crumb-covered pink piece of paper that had come off the bottom of the cupcake. "Oh no, oh no, oh no," she moaned as she continued to search. She raised her hand. "Yes, Dana," said Mrs. Jules. "I need a new paperclip." "But I gave you one at the beginning of the year," said Mrs. Jules. "I know, Mrs. Jules, I'm sorry, but I just can't find it." Mrs. Jules sighed. "I'm very disappointed in you, Dana." "I need a new paperclip too," said Joe. Mrs. Jules glared at him. "What did you do with the one I gave you?" she demanded. "I think I used it on my science homework," said Joe. "I handed that back to you yesterday," said Mrs. Jules. She reminded him. "Didn't you save the paperclip?" "I guess not," Joe admitted. Bibi was finishing up the last part of her picture. "Paperclip, please," she said without looking up from her work. "One for me, too," said Calvin. Mrs. Jules slammed her hand on her desk. "Do you think paperclips grow on trees?" she asked. "I don't know," said Calvin. "I gave each of you a paperclip at the beginning of the year. It was your responsibility to take care of it." She opened her desk drawer, took out a paperclip box, and opened it. "There were only 6 left," she said, shaking her head in dismay. "Oh, can I have one?" said Joy. "I can't find mine." Mrs. Jules was too angry to reply. She moved to the front of the room. "You children are so spoiled," she said. "Do you have any idea what it takes just to make one paperclip?" She held up the last of her remaining paperclips. "Look at the perfect double loop, the way it gleams in the light, almost like a mirror." Her anger seemed to melt away as she marveled at the magnificent metal masterpiece. "It takes a lot of very talented people and years of training and hard work," she explained. "First, there's the wire maker. Paperclip wire has to be just right, not too stiff, but not too wiggly either. Then there's the wire polisher," she continued. "That gives a paperclip its special gleam. The wire cutter, who cuts each wire to a precise length. And finally, most important, the master bender. The bender carefully bends the wire into a perfect double loop." She put her hand over her heart. "Sadly, in the rush, hurry days, not too many people study the art of paperclip bending. There are only a handful of master benders left in the whole world. And who knows, in 10 or 20 years, there might not be any. Everyone will have to switch to staples." "That is just so sad," said Dana. Mrs. Jules gave the paperclip to Dana. "Now, don't lose it." "I won't," promised Dana. "Let me see," said Bibi. Dana proudly showed Bibi her new paperclip. "It's so beautiful," said Bibi, admiring the double loops. "I've never noticed it before." "I'm going to put a paperclip bender when I grow up," said Calvin. Mrs. Jules smiled at Calvin. She had never been more proud of a student. Chapter 5. Eric, and what's his name? Oh, that's right, Eric. There are 3 Erics in Mrs. Jules' class. Eric Fry, Eric Bacon, and the other one, who everyone forgets, Eric Evans. Eric Fry is strong and fast. He's usually the first one chosen when picking teams. Eric Bacon is funny and clever and just a little bit sneaky. Everyone in Mrs. Jules' class likes him, but no one completely trusts him. Eric Evans is kind, quiet, and 100% trustworthy. Sadly, that's the kind of person that's often overlooked. But not today. He thought as he sat at his desk, patiently waiting for Mrs. Jules to finish taking attendance, today would be his day of glory. In his pocket was a plastic bag with 83 nail clippings. 2 numbers had been written on the blackboard, 71 and 2,677. So far, the class had collected a total of 2,677 nail clippings. 71 were the most brought in by one kid. They didn't just have toenails, fingernails counted too. Eric Evans took his bag out of his pocket and placed it on his desk. "How many you got?" whispered Kathy, who sat next to him. Eric didn't want to jinx his big day by saying the number out loud. Besides, he knew Kathy would say something mean or mock him. Mrs. Jules closed her attendance book. "Anyone have any nail clippings this morning?" Eric Evans raised his hand. "Yes, Eric," said Mrs. Jules. Eric Evans quietly pushed his chair back, but before he could get up, he saw Eric Fry already making his way to the front of the room. 40, Eric Fry declared proudly. Eric Fry kept his hand in a fist all morning. Everyone thought he was trying to be tough. Now he opened his fist and let 40 nail clippings fall into the collection bucket. "Well done, Eric," said Mrs. Jules. Everyone clapped their hands. Eric Evans smiled as he clapped his hands too. 83 was more than double 40. Eric Fry did the math on the board. 2,677 plus 40 is 2,717. "Halfway to a million," cheered Stephen. "Not quite," Allison told him. "Anyone else?" asked Mrs. Jules. Again, Eric Evans raised his hand, but Eric Bacon had already hopped out of his seat and was headed towards the front of the room. He handed Mrs. Jules a plastic bag full of nail clippings. 349, he declared triumphantly. The class went wild. Sherry gasped. Stephen fell out of his chair. Eric Bacon danced around Mrs. Jules' desk like a football player had scored a touchdown. Mrs. Jules was skeptical of the spectacle. "I could count them," she warned. Eric stopped dancing. "Go ahead," he challenged her. Mrs. Jules stared Eric Bacon in the eye. Eric Bacon stared right back. Mrs. Jules dumped the bag on her desk and divided the clippings into 4 piles. She asked Damien, Allison, and John to help. They each took a pile, and Mrs. Jules added their totals together. 349, she announced, just as Eric said. Again, everyone cheered, and Eric Bacon continued his victory dance. "How did you get so many?" Mrs. Jules asked. Eric B. stopped dancing. "I went door to door asking my neighbors," he said. Everyone laughed. Leslie had sold wrapping paper door to door, but she couldn't imagine asking people for toenails. "It's easier than asking for money," said Eric. Everyone was happy to donate. He erased the number 71 and put 349 in its place, and then he did the math. 2,717 plus 349 equals 3,066. "Almost a million," Stephen called out. "Not even close," muttered Allison. Mrs. Jules told Eric Bacon to take a Tootsie Roll Pop from the coffee can. He took one, and then when she wasn't looking, he took another. "Anyone else?" asked Mrs. Jules. Eric Evans sat gloomily at his desk. "Raise your hand," urged Kathy. "Why bother?" he muttered. Kathy got up from her seat and stood next to him. She grabbed Eric's arm and raised it for him. "Eric Evans brought a whole lot," she announced. "We'll bring him up," said Mrs. Jules. He had no choice. "It's just 83, he said, and then he emptied a bag into the nailed bucket. "That's the second most ever," shouted Kathy, and she started clapping. Amazingly, everyone else clapped too. They were still clapping as he did the math on the board. 3,066 plus 83 is 3,149. "That's closer to a million," exclaimed Stephen. Everyone cheered. Even Allison couldn't argue with that.